Hey y'all, hi. So I'm about to move. It's not cross country like we've done before, but it's pretty intense. My husband and I are moving ourselves, our baby, our cat, and our small business with all of its equipment and workspace to a different house across town. And we're having to do some pretty significant work on the house before we move. Life is very chaotic. Joe and I are like barely holding it together. There's a lot on our plates, a lot more than usual is on our plates. And I've found myself, whenever I have a spare moment, dreaming of how my life will be when we're in the new house. Now, some of these dreams are legit, like dreaming of having a red dining room, which we are going to have because we are painting the dining room red. But some of them are the kinds of fantasies that I've learned over the years to catch myself in the act of having, because they're the kinds of fantasies that include a trick. They have like a logical fallacy that can be destabilizing and set me up for disappointment. So today I'm going to share 3 lies that I've been telling myself about the new house and kind of try to untell them to myself in the telling of them to you. If you're new, welcome. I'm Hannah. I'm a writer. I'm the author of a newly published prize-winning book of poetry. I'll link that in the description box down below. And I also make YouTube videos about beauty, consumerism, aesthetics, and the psychology of those things. If you like it, I hope you'll subscribe, and let's get right into the meat of this video. So fantasy number 1, lie number 1 that I've been telling myself. In the new house, I'll be a minimalist and I'll have way less stuff. It'll be way easier to keep clutter at bay. I'll have an extremely edited version of my closet and the mail won't pile up and there just won't be those phases of clutter in the house that we always seem to go through in this house. For some reason, when I think of the new house, that's how I imagine it. I imagine the most minimal version of my life, the most minimalist version of myself ever. Lie number 2 that I've been telling myself. In the new house, I will meditate every day and there will be these luxurious, successful meditation sessions and I'll feel better and I'll be more disciplined than ever before, etc., etc. And the real meat of my spiritual journey will begin, like the successful part of my spiritual journey. And I'm not like articulating this stuff or writing into my journal. I've caught myself in the act of having these fantasies almost subconsciously. And then when I say it out loud, I realize that this is what I'm dreaming of, and then it starts to sound ridiculous because it is. Lie number 3, in the new house, I will cook more. We will cook more in general as a family and eat healthier food. That's how I see it. Sounds great, doesn't it? But also sounds unrealistic. So when I caught myself in the act of dreaming these dreams, and I started thinking about bringing this conundrum to YouTube, I remembered my video from last year about the fantasy self. There's a lot about this situation that actually overlaps with the content of that video. And I went back and watched it when I was thinking about what to say in this video, and it really helped. Old Hannah came through and helped me out. So of course, I will link that video in the cards and down below in case you haven't seen it and you'd like to watch it. But I'll tell you, the thesis of that video about the fantasy self is not that fantasy about your future self can never come true and that you should just throw it in the garbage. The thesis of that video is actually that fantasy can lead to reality, but fantasy can't lead to reality if you only act on the fantasy by buying stuff. If you'll remember, if you've seen it, in that video, I talked about how you might buy something to assist yourself in changing your life, but you have to take action. You always have to take an action or many actions in addition to or instead of making a purchase. The purchase itself will never actualize you or your life or your dream. For example, the fantasy that buying a fancy new frying pan will cause you to cook eggs for breakfast every morning instead of buying a pastry on the way to work. You can buy the frying pan, but you have to follow through with going grocery shopping regularly, getting the eggs, getting up a little bit earlier in order to have time to prepare the eggs, do the labor of cooking them, and then making time to sit down and eat them. The frying pan helps, it facilitates, but it doesn't actually cook the eggs for you. It doesn't manifest the eggs. It's It's just a tool for you to do the rest of the work. And I think that that's exactly what's going on for me right now. I'm kind of getting those things mixed up and I need to sort them out. The act of moving and the layout of the house, the space itself, could facilitate me to have less stuff, to have less clutter, to meditate more, and to cook and eat healthier food. But the house isn't going to do the work for me. And more to the point, the house isn't going to change me. It's not going to change who I am, give me more energy, make me more focused. Some things will be a bit different there, but I will still have to change myself. And it actually won't be all that measurably easier in the new house than it is or has been in this house. Just like cooking eggs for breakfast in your fancy new pan won't be all that measurably easier than it was to cook eggs in the old pan. A bit easier, more pleasurable, and that's nothing to sneeze at, especially if that's the motivation that you need. But the key to understanding the difference between the fantasy of change, the fantasy of a changed version of yourself, and actual evolution of yourself is understanding that the majority of the work, the brunt of the work, is the same either way. Whether you have an old pan or a new one, whether you live in your old house or in a new house. So how can I apply these principles to my current rose-colored, idealized vision of my future life in the new house? Let's go through them one by one and see. Number one, in the new house, I'll be a minimalist. I'll have way less stuff, especially fewer nicer clothes in my wardrobe. So the fantasy of having a more streamlined wardrobe and living happily with a more streamlined wardrobe actually is achievable for me, I think, at this point. But moving to a new house is not magically going to cause it to happen. That's what part of me has been thinking, and that's the dream that needs to die. I could do it. I could have it, but it's something that I have to perform labor to achieve. And that labor is decision-making and decluttering. And I actually think that I am way overdue for a thorough closet declutter. So catching myself in the act of this fantasy is making me want to really focus on setting aside time to do that. So I'm going to talk it over with Joe. We're going to get it on the summer calendar for filming. I actually do think that the filming space that we're going to have in the new house will be much better for filming a closet declutter than the space that we have in this house is. That is true. That's a real way in which the house will help just by being itself. I'm looking forward to breaking in the studio that we'll have there with the closet declutter. But the fantasy, achievable though it is, a smaller wardrobe and a more minimalist wardrobe, it's not going to come about magically on its own the moment that we move, which is, I think, what I've been feeling like it is. I'm going to have to work for it. The other part of this fantasy, which is that mail won't pile up, the house will never look or feel cluttered, we won't even have clutter to end up anywhere in the house, like that kind of thing. I don't know. Some of this kind of aligns with what I was just saying. Some of it has to do with setting up space. So we don't really have a good system here. We don't have it set up well to keep mail under control as it comes into the house, for example. So that tells me to focus energy on setting up a better system, basically to prioritize systems and layouts that will keep clutter down. But the second part of the dream of not having clutter, the dream of keeping mail under control, is a bit more blunt, and it happens in the future. Once we're in the space, you just have to do it. Make use of the space, take time to sort the mail, put things away constantly. And that is just ongoing. That is potentially a habit change in some areas of the house for us, and that will take muscle and focus. And we may or may not make that change anytime soon, but I need to stop lying to myself and thinking that moving to the new house is suddenly going to turn us into people who never let mail pile up. And saying it out loud is really helping me kind of pop that fantasy bubble and bring myself back down to earth. And think about systems for controlling mail as it comes into the house. Do any of you have good ones? How do people do it? Okay, fantasy number 2. In the new house, I'll meditate every day and I'll feel way better. I'll be more disciplined and my real spiritual journey will begin. This is sort of the silliest one because I'm looking at myself, I'm like floating above myself, seeing myself talk, and I'm like, guess what, Mary? Your spiritual journey has already begun, which is true. And I am already meditating every day. So it's like, what is it that I'm dreaming of? I'm dreaming of perfection, basically. Perfection of a thing that I'm already working little by little on doing. It's weird. This is sort of the silliest and the subtlest with something like meditation and with increasing mindfulness in the moment, in the day-to-day, which is one of the things that I'm working on. I mean, they go together. The very definition of it, of all of that, is that it starts where you are now. It's only now. What I'm working on through that is accepting everything as it is, and not striving or straining for some future ideal. And everything just as it is here, now, still in this house, with the mail piled up. And for the practice itself, meditation itself, as I've learned from studying it with my wonderful friend and mentor, Julia Frodal, who I will link down below. She is such a great resource for anyone who's interested in this kind of thing. As I've learned, the meditation that matters is the one that you do today. So largely when I catch myself in the act of having this fantasy, it just sort of turns back on itself. It's a reminder that the present moment is a beautiful moment, even though it's chaotic and messy and everything is changing. Because really, everything is always changing. Change is the only constant, and it will continue to be that way. It is the height of absurdity to wait until change stops before becoming spiritual. I think I would like to have a better space, a better physical space for it. That is potentially possible in the new house, and so that's something that I could potentially prioritize. That's actionable. I'll have a little bit more private of a workspace, and I could make sure that I make part of that workspace a space that's comfortable for meditation. Sure, I could do that. But then once I do that, doing that, it's like buying the new frying pan. I still have to take action. I still have to use the space by meditating every day, which is something that I'm already doing. So what is it that I'm dreaming of? I think any more thorough a discussion of the paradoxes that surround personal discipline and the deepening of a meditation practice would make this video way too long. That's a topic for its own video. But talking it through has really helped me. I'm going to now leave that one there and let's look at number 3. Fantasy number 3. In the new house, I will cook a lot more and eat healthier food. This one is actually relatively well encapsulated by the frying pan example from the other video. I mean, not totally, because the kitchen in this new house is very small and awkward and in no way the fancy frying pan of kitchens. But moving will give us a kitchen reset, a chance to declutter a little bit, to reorganize and start fresh. And from there, it will be technically a bit physically easier to restart cooking more fresh food. But when I reflect on this, I realize that the thing that's actually keeping us from cooking right now as much as we would like to is just the fact that we are so incredibly overwhelmed right now with the work of preparing the new house, preparing ourselves to move, especially because we have a small baby right now and the house has ended up needing some pretty extensive work that we're having to supervise and learn how to do that because we've never done anything like that before. So yes, once we settle in the new house, we will likely get back to cooking more of our meals, but it won't be because of some sort of fantasy self being catalyzed by the new house. It won't be the house changing me into a different person. It will just be because after we move, all of the extra work that is currently pulverizing our schedule will be done and we'll have more time. We'll have a normal amount of time to do normal things like cooking one's own food. And seeing it that way is good for me because it takes the glamour of the fantasy self away from that future cooking self. I hope that makes sense. It makes me feel less delusionally like I will change or like the house will change me. And it makes me more in touch with the reality, which is that we'll cook when we can, like we always have. And right now, we barely can. In a few months, we will be able to much more. And that's it. I did cook dinner last night. It's not like we're doing none. The dream is starting to infiltrate the present and make the present seem less wonderful, And that's the kind of thing that I would like to stop in its tracks. Because again, as we discussed with the meditation, the present is all there is. So it's really a shame to let it be tarnished, especially by something that is really quite wonderful, which is this move. So those are the 3 lies that I'm telling myself, or rather trying not to tell myself about the move, the new house, and the person that I will be once we get there. And it's not as simple or as sad as saying to myself, these are just fantasies, you'll never achieve them, nothing is going to change in the new house, so stop imagining that it will. Because I don't think that. I do believe in change and in working towards the life that you want. And this move is an opportunity for change. And I am hoping that when I'm on the other side of this transition, I will be able to take some of those steps. But reminding myself that the new space won't cause them, that I'm the one who is going to have to cause those things, take those steps, it feels good because it takes some of the pressure off. It, again, keeps me from that stressful striving feeling and reconnects me with reality. And it helps me to dwell more in the here and now instead of starting to get this feeling that good life is on hold until the future arrives. Have you ever had this experience of thinking that something about you will be different after a big life transition, and then the transition happens, the future arrives, and you realize that you still have to work for the change that you dreamed about? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for being here. And don't forget to take extra good care of yourself so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world. My throat made a weird noise, but I think we got it.